Hi, everyone. My name is Emmy Amaretti, and I'm Assistant Director of our ACU Online Writing Center. And I'm here today with Sarah Tabawada, our Multilingual Writing Specialist. Ahoy,
Hi, everybody.
Sarah. So the topic of this webinar is formulating a problem statement for a local context. We'll be posting the links to this recording and the slide deck for the webinar to our Online Writing Center website, and the links to the resources in the slide deck will be active. Before we jump into our topic, let's start by talking a little bit about the Online Writing Center. First off, you can check out the Online Writing Center group in My ACU by clicking this first link. The second link takes you to a video where you can watch to find out the steps to make an appointment and submit a paper. As you may know, we work with you at any stage of your writing, and we do have two types of appointments on the schedule. The first is an email or asynchronous appointment where you upload the paper and the tutor sends you feedback by email in 24 hours. That's called the Writing Center Report. We also have Zoom appointments where you can make an appointment to talk to me or to Sarah. You just go to the schedule at the time of the appointment, which is listed in Central Time, and click on the Zoom link, and you will be connected to us. You can also access many writing-related resources on our Online Writing Center website in that third green link on the screen. And you can fill out the form in the bottom spot to give us feedback on our webinars so that we know what is helpful or what you would like more put into in our webinars to help you out. So now let's go back to our problem statement for a local context. These are our learning objectives for the webinar. First, we will understand the purpose of a problem statement. Next, we will identify key elements and strategies for writing an effective problem statement. And finally, we will workshop BCMO 493, Week 1, Assignment 1, which has quite a long title, so I did not put it on this slide. But our first learning objective is to understand the purpose of a problem statement.
Drum roll.
Yep. So what is a problem statement, especially with focus on a local context? So a strong problem statement articulates an issue or a gap that needs to be addressed. It should be clearly connected to a specific context, meaning a setting or group. In other words, it's not just any problem in the whole world. It's a problem that exists in your community or your organization or your field of study. Second, a good problem statement sets the stage for further work. So whether you're launching a research project or evaluating a program or starting a strategic initiative at a business, the problem statement points people toward why the work matters right now. And finally, remember that you are identifying a problem. You're not jumping to a solution. That's a common issue that we see in problem statements, but your goal isn't to fix the problem yet, it's to name what isn't working.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we see the word um problem in our mind automatically thinks solution. And that is not what the problem statement is about. It's all about identifying what you're wanting to look more into. Like, what are you inquiring? It says problem statement. We want to keep the focus on the problem, even though our mind wants to insert solutions. We have to fight it and not go there.
Yep. So here's a quick example. One way to start a problem statement is to say the problem is blank. In this case, the problem is that within our community, refugees experiencing traumatic grief lack access to culturally sensitive pastoral care. This gap hinders their ability to heal, build resilience, and regain a sense of belonging. So we do see that there is a gap um, in terms of culturally sensitive pastoral care. It's specific to a local context, and it does focus on the problem. We're not offering a solution here. So now we talked about what a problem statement is. Let's talk about why we write one. What is the purpose of a problem statement? So in academic contexts, like if you're doing a research paper, the problem statement can serve three major roles. It can justify the need for research. If there's not a problem, there's no reason to do a study about it. The problem statement is going to convince other people, your committee members, funders for the study, or your readers that the topic is worth investigating. Second, it helps you as the writer define the scope and focus of the study. It helps you narrow stuff down so that you keep your research on track and the things you're trying to do aren't too broad or too vague. And third, it actually helps you provide a framework for the investigation. It helps you set up your research questions, your methods, and eventually interpret your conclusions. It's all guided by this problem that you're trying to examine. So in a more practical or an organizational context, we can look at a problem statement to outline the problem that your project is aiming to solve. So everybody is on the same page. We have the same starting point. This is what we're trying to work on. Within an organization, a problem statement can help identify areas for change or improvement. And this is important if you're working on something like advocating for a new program or maybe policy adjustments in your organization. Finally, a well-framed problem will help you guide decision making and, importantly, in an organizational context, your resource allocation. It lets you prioritize what needs attention and where your resources need to go.
I like how you say the aim is to solve the problem, but again, the focus is our problem, not on
Mhm.
stating solutions or proposing or suggesting solutions. It literally, when we have our problem statement, the focus is what's the problem.
Yep. We get around to the solving later.
Mhm. First things first.
Right. So now we've talked a little bit about what a problem statement is not, but here's a whole slide devoted to that. First of all, a problem statement is not a question. How can the church best minister to refugees? That's a nice research or project question, but it's not a problem statement because it's not telling us what is wrong that we're trying to solve, in other words. Um, Next, we have said repeatedly that a problem statement is not a solution. If you say the church should start a refugee outreach program, that's actually getting ahead of ourselves. Remember that the first thing you're doing in your problem statement is defining the issue. You are not yet prescribing how to fix it. Third, it is not a broad topic. Refugee ministry is an important issue. That's pretty general. It doesn't focus on something specific. It doesn't explain what the actual problem is in your setting. So it wouldn't be a very good guide of what you're trying to do in your project. Next, a problem statement is not a statement of need alone, such as the church needs more volunteers to work with refugees. That sounds like a really important thing, but it doesn't clarify the underlying issue or why that matters in our local context. And last, a problem statement is not just a description of symptoms. For instance, refugees in our community are not attending church services. That describes what's happening, but it doesn't give a why behind the problem or what the deeper issue may be. So as you
Even
go ahead.
even though these aren't what we're going to use for our problem statement, these are actually really great for helping us brainstorm and get to our actual problem statement.
Yep.
Because if we took our question, how can the church best minister to refugees? Or our solution that that's not what we're wanting for the problem statement, but we can use that. Why should the church start a refugee outreach program? If you answer it, if you start kind of taking these sentences and dissecting them, that can kind of help you get to the bottom, sort of dig a bit deeper. And when you're doing that, hopefully you can kind of start zeroing in on what the actual problem is.
That's right. I like that approach because even if you come up with one of these, you're going to be able to go all around the world and figure out what exactly is the basis for all of these, what needs attention and why. And that would be your
Mm-hmm.
problem.
Yeah.
So we just talked a little bit about why problem statements matter, but let's go through it again. The problem statement is going to lay the foundation for everything that follows. First off, a well-written problem statement will provide focus and direction to keep your research, your project, or whatever you're trying to do from drifting off course. Everybody can stay aligned because they know what the issue is that you're trying to address. Second, it will justify the need for action, whether you're trying to start a program, request funding, or launch a study. People need to understand why the issue matters. Third, it helps you clearly articulate the problem for other people and for yourself. When you pinpoint the problem, it just comes better into focus so that it becomes easier to work with. And it establishes the importance of the issue. You're not just naming something nebulous, you're giving a really specific issue in your context and showing why it matters right now. So now that we've gone over what problem statements are and why they matter, let's move on to our learning objective 2, which is to identify key elements and strategies for writing an effective problem statement. Earlier, we hit on a little bit the three elements of a problem statement. First, we have a gap. That's an issue or an unmet need. Something is missing or broken or just not working as well as it should. And we need to figure out what isn't happening that should be happening or what is the challenge going on here. Next, we need to think about the context because, again, this webinar is focused on a problem statement in a local context. So we're talking about the setting or the background where the problem exists. Is it in a specific community? Is it in a specific organization like your church ministry? Is it in a school? A strong problem statement is going to be grounded in a real place or situation for what we're looking at. Finally, we have the significance. This is like the so what, why does it matter? Um, what impact is this issue having on people or systems or positive outcomes for some group? And this is the part that's going to show why the issue is worth addressing. So when you're drafting your problem statement, keep an eye out to make sure you include the gap, the context, and the significance. And these help you keep clarity or purpose in what you're doing. Keep in mind, too, that a problem statement should also be specific, based on evidence, and relatively concise and easy to understand. So we're going to look at all of these elements in an example. So first of all, the context is at the top. The problem is that within the local community, our context here is our local community where we live. It's giving us a defined setting so that we're not just talking about the issue in general terms. Next, the middle block is our gap. The problem is that within the local community, refugees experiencing traumatic grief lack access to culturally sensitive pastoral care. This is a really specific unmet need in our local community that we feel needs to be addressed. Third, we've got the significance spelled out in another second short sentence. This gap hinders their ability to heal, build resilience, and regain a sense of belonging. So this shows us why the issue matters. They need to be working on their emotional recovery, their resilience and growth after whatever they've faced, and their social integration into this community that they have now been pushed into being part of. So that's why it's important for us to address the concern. So we can also consider those other criteria that were listed on the last slide, like, is this specific? Yeah, it's pretty specific. It clearly identifies a particular population, issue, and setting. Is it evidence-based? We're not citing data in this sentence, but the way it's written, we can tell that whoever wrote it has seen evidence of this observable issue, and it can be backed up by local findings or something that they're seeing going on in their specific community. Is it concise? It's pretty concise. It's, two short sentences. And is it easy to understand? I mean, I wrote it, but I think so. The language is,
I can
you can understand
second
it.
that. I can understand it, and I really like how you color coded everything.
I like color coding.
I'm a big fan of the color coding.
Yes, I know. So if color coding helps you when you're writing, try color coding in your problem statement to make sure you have all the parts. It's a nice strategy. If
Mhm.
colors don't work for you, you can use something else like bold and underlining and, some
Italics.
other third thing, italics. Yep. So you don't have to use color. You can use something else if color.
Ooh, you could get whimsical and do different fonts.
That's true. So many ways to meet your learning style and your learning needs while making sure
Mm,
you have all three elements in your problem statement.
here, here.
So next, let's look at strategies for writing a problem statement. First of all, when you start out trying to identify a problem, you are most likely going to start by identifying a general issue and conceptualize by going from broad to narrow. So here we've got an example of maybe I started out thinking about my specific problem or my problem like this. The general problem is that the increasing number of refugees in our community presents churches with challenges in providing adequate support services. And then I might narrow it to the specific problem is how we can support them as they are experiencing traumatic grief if our pastors don't have adequate training in things like culturally sensitive care. So that's just one way that we could narrow that broad problem down. But as Sarah is going to tell you, you might have a lot of specific problems that you think of.
Hmm. It's, yeah, it's not really a straight jump from broad to specific, even though we usually talk about writing in a very linear way. Here's the first step, then the next step. It is not a straight and narrow path. Writing usually lots of twists and turns and some dead ends. I like your X's. But but it's good because we start general and then you kind of get all these little offshoots, these potentials. Maybe I'm going this direction, and through brainstorming, which any tutor at the writing center can help you out with. So that's a nice way of using the Zoom options. But you might identify several gaps, and which isn't a bad thing. That's just you have a lot of options to pick from, and it's a good place to be. And then you can kind of slowly go whittling them down until you find your all-star problem you want to focus on.
Your all-star problems.
Well, they have stars. They have three stars.
There are stars. I
There are
yeah.
stars.
Um, but when
Yeah.
Sarah brought this up when we were talking about planning for this webinar, I thought, you're right. The general problem is that the refugees are presenting challenges with support services in the community, but maybe we think about that from food, housing, and also
Mhm.
the pastoral or spiritual care. And you have to consider your position, where you are, and what you are best equipped to help with, or maybe what the biggest need is that you're best able to help with, because maybe somebody else is helping with the housing or the food or other practical concerns. And if we're working through a church ministry, focusing on that pastoral care is our niche, our star spot in the addressing the larger issue.
Mhm.
So you will find your stars for sure.
Yes, yes, you will.
A few other things to keep in mind, which we have also kind of touched on already. Make sure you're using precise language when you write your problem statement with specific and descriptive words so that other people can understand exactly what you're talking about. Make sure that you can support it with evidence, like data or examples to back it up. Some evidence that there's a problem. Or, Sarah, what about lack of evidence?
That is can also be used as evidence because if you're looking at the research and you're not finding any research that focuses on your specific topic, then that's also a really good indicator. Well, no one else has looked into this, which is all the more reason why it should be.
True. And third, make sure that it's an addressable problem. In other words, make sure it's something that you can realistically work on in an actionable way. Because you only have so much time and you only have so many resources. So going off on a tangent for something that you can't really do anything about isn't probably the best use of that time and resources. So just make sure it's realistic so you can make the most impact with your work. So now we're going to move to learning objective 3, which is workshopping the specific BCMO 493 week 1 assignment 1. Finally, we see the whole title, Discerning the
Dun dun
Door
dun.
with certificate knowledge and appreciative inquiry. So we have a door that looks pretty. Um,
That is a nice door.
thank you. I thought it kind of went with our color scheme, so that's why I picked that one. And this is a link to the assignment. So here's our assignment preamble. The purpose of this assignment is to discern the most applicable insights from the certificate courses for your context and apply them to a clearly articulated problem, need, or gap that exists in the congregation where you serve. So we are talking about a ministry context. For the assignment, you will create either a Word document or an infographic, whatever suits your style, whatever you want to do. If you need assistance with creating an infographic, they do have links within the module to help you. And there are 6 very specific parts for this assignment that we're going to go through. So parts 1 and 2. First, you need to have a summary of the most valuable insights for your church from each of the 5 courses you have taken in the certificate. BIBO 320, BCMO 322, whatever biblical studies course you took, BIMO 401, and BCMO 335. So you are going to reference each course and sources and write one paragraph about each course to sum up the most valuable insights for your church from that course. And second, how does one insight that you've listed connect to a current strength or weakness you notice in your church? So again, this is both of these for each course. So they're saying in the instructions that you can either write a paragraph about each course, where, for instance, in the first sentence, name the course, give 2 or 3 insights from the course, and then write a sentence or 2 that explains how they connect to a strength or weakness in your congregation. You can also write a table where maybe you put the name of the course in one column, the insights from the course in a middle column, and then whatever strength or weakness you're tying it to in your congregation in a third column. So you can pick and choose how you want to present this, which is nice. Flexibility is nice.
Mm. I would definitely go the infographic route.
I agree. I like the table option in particular. So part 3 is seek God about the evaluation. In other words, you are supposed to engage in some spiritual disciplines to help you discern the problem, the need, or the gap that you want to address. And for this, you need to write or list the spiritual disciplines that you engaged in list form. So, for instance, a bulleted list or a numbered list, but you have to use complete sentences. That is in the instructions. Part 4, they want you to engage in appreciative inquiry. So they want you to write a paragraph or a list, either or. In either case, you have to use complete sentences to explain some appreciative inquiry steps that you took to identify a problem or gap that God is inviting you to address through hope or appreciation in the church. So, in other words, you are looking for um, celebrations or things that folks in your church think are going well and what their strengths are so that you can apply that to the problem. And here are some options that they list in the assignment for the appreciative inquiry, which they do refer to as AI. And I put that here so that you please don't confuse it with AI, artificial intelligence. That is all the rage these days. They are not talking about that. They want you to use appreciative inquiry, not artificial intelligence, for your assignment. But you can interview the church ministry and staff to discern like their celebrations of what's going well. You can covertly journal positively formative conversations you hear other members having, like, man, we did such a good job with our musical outreach with the chorus choir this week. Woohoo. You can look at historical documents. So that means look in old church bulletins or other documents that celebrate or show positive things the church has been successful at doing. You can go to the church's online chat or, their social media page and see what people are celebrating there. You can have a small group discussion where you ask people, what do they love about the church, or when do they feel closest to Christ in the community? You can do individual interviews, asking people about their experience with the church and noting the positive things that they've seen. Or you can ask members to create an artwork that captures their relationship with the church, and then you can interpret that to see what they are appreciating. So there's all kinds of stuff. If you did the artwork, you could ask them for their permission to share it in your infographic, and that would make it snazzy.
Mm.
So that was the 4th section. The 5th section is to compose a clear problem statement. And Sarah said, I love that they have given us a sentence starter. So your problem
Yes.
statement needs to start like this. The problem/gap I will attempt to address in my church context with God, and the insights I have gained in this certificate is, and then fill in the blank. They've made a note. This problem statement will carry you through the rest of the course. Your whole course is going to be based on this problem that you're coming up with now. So please choose carefully. Please choose something that was discerned through appreciative inquiry that is significant, affects the Christ-likeness or kingdom culture of the church. So that's section 5, is this 1 or 2 sentences for your problem statement. And last, you need to explain why this problem or gap is such a high priority in your specific context or ministry setting. There is a scoring rubric. There are a lot of points for this assignment, and this breaks down how it goes. You get 25 points for summing up the most valuable insights from each course. You get 25 points for connecting those insights to a problem. Well, actually, the instructions said you could also connect it to a strength of the church if you wanted to use the more appreciative inquiry twist. So I'm going to assume that that's covered in this row of the rubric too.
Mhm.
25 points for 1 to 2 spiritual disciplines that you practiced to come up with your problem. 25 points for 1 to 2 appreciative inquiry practices that you completed. And also adding some that you plan to do in the future because you didn't have time to do them this week. 20 points for your clear problem statement, 10 points for justifying your problem statement, and 10 points for your well-formatted Word document or snazzy infographic. And please keep in mind, charts, lists, and paragraphs have to be complete sentences. Please don't use any sentence fragments or you will lose points for that.
And even if they choose the infographic option, they can still run it through one of the lovely tutors at the Online Writing Center.
That's true. We love infographics at the Online Writing
Mhm.
Center, especially Sarah and me.
Yes,
We're visual
that's true.
people.
Yes, we are. So if you go the Word document route, that's awesome. We'll look at your Word document, and if you go the infographic route, we'll take a look see at that too.
Absolutely. So here's another fun visual, noting that Sarah and I are visual people, of your assignment process in general. You are going to be taking your course knowledge plus your practice of spiritual disciplines like prayer, plus your appreciative inquiry process, and boil it all down into one or two sentences that begin with this sentence starter that we've already gone over. So here is a very, very abbreviated, limited example. So pretend that in my little burnt orange top circle, that would be my course knowledge. One of the things that I noticed in the class that I took that talked about Mark was that Jesus ministered continuously to marginalized populations. And that was really impactful to me. And I've noticed that a strength of my church is that we also minister to marginalized populations. So that would be in that first section of my infographic in that table, or if I want to write in paragraphs in my paragraph. Secondly, I need to engage in my spiritual disciplines, which is the second highest or green circle. So perhaps I engaged in prayer to discern. I wanted to talk to God and see what did he say about what is my church, what is their role in our community, what should we be doing to help people in the community at this point. Um, Maybe as my appreciative inquiry, which is that bottom purple circle, maybe I went through old church bulletins or histories to just kind of review these fruitful past ministries that we've engaged in, where, or maybe people that I talked to celebrated, look at this outreach we did with the homeless population in our area, people experiencing homelessness rather, or people who maybe were displaced by I don't know, a fire in an apartment complex. Maybe we helped them somehow. So I see evidence of this positive that we've done. So maybe then I come up with this problem or gap at the bottom, which again, we've already gone over. The problem slash gap I will attempt to address in my church context with God, and the insights I've gained in this certificate is that within our community, refugees experiencing traumatic grief lack access to culturally sensitive pastoral care. This gap hinders their ability to heal, build resilience, and regain a sense of belonging. And this then is going to become the basis for my next 6 weeks of work and this ministry that I'm going to attempt to implement in my church to solve the problem. So that's it. That's our assignment. Um, we will now wrap
We
up.
covered a lot of
Sarah,
ground.
we did, with lots of lovely pictures at that.
Yes, well, it must be us spearheading this webinar.
Yes, exactly. And Sarah is going to wrap it up for us.
Alrighty, so like we said, we went over a lot. We explored several tips and examples to understand the purpose of the problem statement, which is focusing on your problem,
Yes.
identifying what it is through elements and strategies for writing, which, as we identified, is not a very cookie cutter, straight and narrow path. You might have several ideas that take you different directions. You might make some Zoom appointments to brainstorm with a writing tutor in order to narrow it down and really identify that key gap or problem that you're going to use for the entire course. And we used the BCMO 493 week 1 assignment 1 with which I really like that they give us the sentence stem for your problem statement because that's
Yes,
just really nice. It's really nice when they throw us a bone.
it is really nice to help frame your thinking that way.
Yep. So, as we've mentioned, you are welcome to schedule an appointment with any of the tutors at the Writing Center. You can reach out to us by emailing us at that first link, online writing center at acu.edu. There's, of course, the Online Writing Center website where we have a bunch of wonderful resources. You can access previous webinars. We have a blog, a YouTube channel, a bunch of other cool stuff. And of course, fill out this feedback form because we love hearing from y'all. What are we doing good? What are we maybe not doing so good? What do you wish we were doing that we're not? And as far as scheduling, there's 2 steps. You schedule the appointment and then you upload your file. And you do not have to do those at the same time. You have the option of scheduling up to 2 weeks ahead. So if you know when an assignment deadline is, you can schedule ahead. And as long as you upload your file before the time of your appointment, then you're good to go. And if it's a Zoom appointment and you're just wanting to brainstorm, then you don't have to upload anything. You just let your tutor know in the appointment form that you're wanting help brainstorming so that we know not to be looking for a file. And like I mentioned, we have all these lovely resources. There's the ACU library, and the librarians are kind of ninja bosses at helping you find articles. So if you're
Absolutely.
struggling to find evidence to back up your problem, they're a phenomenal resource to reach out to. And of course, we have our APA templates available on the ACU Writing Center website. Those are super helpful so that you're working on your content and not having to spend too much time trying to format your paper. It's formatted for you and you just kind of get to fill in the blanks.
Yep.
And there is a APA self-paced course if you want to improve your APA skills.
It's
And we have
interactive.
yep. Oh, APA, yeah, I think we can all use some APA improvement as they continue trying to change stuff from all their different versions. And our lovely YouTube channel,
Yes.
where I believe that's where you can also see some of our webinars.
Yes, we put our favorite webinars on the YouTube playlist. And we do have playlists for different programs, like our undergraduate playlist or our
Mhm.
MMFT playlist, and so on.
And you can, of course, access all of our webinars on the Online Writing Center website, and you can see which webinars are coming up if you're interested in attending them. You can RSVP. If you RSVP, then you automatically get sent a reminder and the slide deck afterwards, right?
Yes, that is true.
So if I RSVP and then I'm not able to make it, I will still be able to go. I'll get it emailed to me so I can see the whole thing afterwards.
That is correct.
Oh,
We do
I like
have
that we do that.
another BCMO 493 tie-in this term, which will
Mm.
be live this time and not virtual release on crafting a
Oh,
mission statement. And we put the one on the bottom here. Recently, we did one about citing the Bible in APA style, which was a major change in APA 7, how they cite the Bible. So Basil, Dr. Considine just did a beautiful webinar. The slide deck for that is an invaluable resource if you would like examples on how to cite the Bible as you're going through your project for this course.
Nice. Well, thank you so much to everyone who's watching this webinar. We hope the content was useful and maybe we'll see you in an appointment.
We hope so, or our drop-in sessions that are coming up. Sarah and I
Ooh,
will both
open
be at
office
Gary's.
hours.
Yes. Yay. Thank you, everybody. And bye, Sarah.
Bye.